Good morning, everyone. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow, the 8th, 9th, and 10th day of Teves are actually very important days in the Jewish calendar. It may not be well known, but the earlier authorities attach great importance to these days. The Tur, the first Shulchan Aruch, or the earlier Shulchan Aruch, says, he quotes the Bahag, an earlier compilation, that there were three events during the month of Teves that warrant fasting. Three serious events took place. The 8th of Teves, which was yesterday, according to Gemara Megillah, was when the Ptolemy II, who had a huge library in Alexandria in Egypt, he called together the Sanhedrin and he had the entire Tanakh translated into Greek, what we now call the Septuagint, Targum HaShivim. And by forcing the translation into Greek, it was considered to be a very sad day for the Jewish people. And it's even brought down in Shulchan Aruch. So because the Torah was translated into Greek, we fast. That's the 8th day. On the 9th, which is today, something happened, but we don't know what. A very enigmatic language. Professor Schneier Lyman wrote a whole article on this one line. Tried to figure out what happened on the 9th day of Teves that warranted fasting. And we really don't know. But it was, and the earliest, when are fasts determined? Who determines fasts? So Chazal usually, if you have psukim, and we'll talk about the psukim in Yechezkel, I talk about our Tanis Tzibur that we have today, but there was a sefer during the Bayit Sheni called Megillas Tanis. And Megillas Tanis listed all the days where events took place during the Second Temple period which warranted communal fasting. Or days that you don't fast and you don't say Tachanun. That was the earliest compilation. Usually the Chazal established which days we fast. On the 10th day of Teves, which is tomorrow, which is accepted as a communal fast day, that's when the siege of Yerushalayim began. And we'll get to that Gemara a little bit later. But today is also mentioned, the yard site of Ezra HaSofer. Yeah. Okay. But it's not written in it, correct. The only place where we have a reference to the yard site of Ezra HaSofer, if you pay attention to the Slichos that we're going to say tomorrow, it's mentioned in the Slichos. That today is Ezra HaSofer's yard site. But the Tur, who was a pretty learned guy, it's a day that the people fasted, but we don't know why. But these 3 days are very important. So I want to talk about fast days in general. You have in Sefer Zechariah, Navi Zechariah, he talks about 4 days that are public fast days. He talks about Tzom Revi, Tzom Chamishi, Tzom Hashvi, and Tzom Ha'asiri. This goes back to the earliest period following the Churban of Bayis Rishon, so it's fairly old. Tzom Revi is Shavasa B'Tammuz. Tzom HaChamishi is Tisha B'Av. Tzom HaShvi'i is Tzom Gedalia. And Tzom HaAsiri is the fast during the month of Teves, which we'll have tomorrow. There's a machlokas in the Gemara between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shimon as to what exactly happened on this day. Was the day that the city was surrounded or they breached the walls? There's a whole discussion. There's a big machlokas there about the reason. But basically, it was the beginning of the Churban. Some hold it might be the end of the Churban. We're not really sure about that. But there's a fascinating passage in the Sefer of Vudram. The Vudram wrote a Sefer of Minhagim. The Vudram was a Talmud of the Balaturim, author of the Tur. And he has a very intriguing discussion, which serves as a springboard to the nature of the day, I guess. He says, if Asara B'Teves comes out on Shabbos, this is the Vudram now, if the Asara B'Teves comes out on Shabbos, we fast on Shabbos. That's the only time, other than Yom Kippur, according to the Vudram, but don't get upset, we don't paskin that way. But according to the Avudraham, who was a reliable authority, we fast on Shabbos. Because the pasuk in Yechezkel says, Be'etzem hayom hazeh, which is the same language that's used for Yom Kippur. So we treat it like Yom Kippur, we fast on Shabbos. The Shulchan Aruch disagrees. I don't know where he got this from. The Tziv talks about it. And he said the difference between Etzem Hayom Hazeh and Yom Kippur and Etzem Hayom Hazeh in terms of Asar B'Teves is because Etzem Hayom Hazeh means that you start to fast a little bit early. So the Suda HaMafsekes before Yom Kippur begins the fast. It's a whole discussion there. But clearly the Rambam Paskins and everybody else Paskins, we do not fast. But the fact that he mentions it indicates it's quite an interesting, important fast day. The reason why he mentions it, people, who was it? The Minchas Chinuch suggests that the Navi refers to each of these Tanesim by the months, some Revi, some Chvi, etc., because rather than specific days, because they weren't originally established on specific days, he holds. Only in later generations were they finally set calendrically. And that's why we have a machlokas concerning Asar B'Teves, perhaps. Reb Chaim Soloveitchik, the Rav's grandfather, talks about Asar B'Teves being an exception to the rule. It's a very unusual fast day. Because it says Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh, then it can't be observed at any other time except on the 10th. So he disagrees with that, the Minchas Chinuch. But he also indicates, and this is very unusual for Reb Chaim, that you might actually have to fast on Shabbos if Asar B'Teves comes out on Shabbos, which is very unusual. We don't paskin now. There are different types of fasts. There are fasts of mourning. There are fasts of crying. The purpose of a fast is really tshuva. That's the bottom line. All tanesim, the whole purpose of a tanis is for introspection, not to eat that day, so you focus on that which is important. There are also fasts of bakosha. If you have we spoke about a tanis chalom, for example. If you have a disturbing dream, so you fast in order to try to understand the dream or hope that it was not negatively going to impact you in your life, perhaps. So there are different types of fasts. But most fast days, even those that might be considered fast days related to mourning, destruction of the temple or beginning of destruction of the temple and so forth, many of the commentaries, the Or Sameach and others, talk about that all of these things are really for tshuva. That's the whole purpose of a tanis, even a tanis chalom. And Asar B'Teves begins during the day, not at night. And he also indicates he might be open to the concept of fasting on Asar B'Teves even on Shabbos. So it's not such a clear-cut issue among the Gedolei HaPoskim. And the Or Sameach brings proofs to, like a Tanis Chalom, for example, you do on Shabbos. So it's not that black and white. Yeah.
If you fast on Shabbos because of the dream, then you have to fast another day also because you fasted on Shabbos. So the same thing applies here.
Okay. There are people who fasted every Monday and Thursday, probably because they didn't have what to eat. But there are a lot of different interpretations. There's a machlokas. Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shimon is the beginning of the destructions, at the end of the Churban. I don't want to get into details now, but I want to talk about another interesting facet of Asur B'Teves, which may or may not be that well known. Following the Holocaust, a lot of questions were raised. One of the major questions that was addressed to poskim is, my mother, my father, my brother, my sister, my child, whoever was killed at some point. I don't know the date. I don't know when they died or when they were killed or murdered. How do I observe a yortzeit? How do I determine what was the date of their yortzeit? Very serious question. And in 1949, and the rabbis wrestled with this question, the Rabbanut of Israel, chief rabbinate, says Asara B'Teves is the date when you commemorate the yortzeit for people who died during the Shoah that you don't know the exact date. And that was a collective date that was assigned by the rabbinate on Asara B'Teves. Not only that, again, it was whether it was the beginning or the end of the Holocaust is a separate discussion. But they also, interesting, in a very practical way, they picked Asur B'Teves because it's in the wintertime and the fast is a little bit shorter. So they could fast, if people fast on the yortzeit as well, so it's a shorter fast. And they also said that not only is this the day to commemorate the yortzeit of those who perished, but it's a general memorial day for the Shoah. Again, in 19, as I said, when the Rabbanut HaRashit, the chief rabbinate of Israel, chose Asur B'Teves not just for the date of the yortzeit, but it's a general, because people were pressuring the rabbis. This was a horrible, horrible tragedy that befell the Jewish people. There should be a day to memorialize the Shoah. And they picked Asur B'Teves for that day. Ultimately, however, of the same year, the Knesset picked the 27th of Nisan as Yom HaShoah V'Hagvura to commemorate initially the heroes of the Warsaw Ghetto, which began on Erev Pesach, which lasted a few weeks. But the chief rabbinate and many segments of the more right-wing Jewish community do use the date of Asur B'Teves to commemorate the Shoah. In general, you don't hear too much about it because they're not big on commemorating the Shoah. But anyone in the Haredi community that commemorates the Shoah does it on Asur B'Teves, not on Yom HaShoah, as the rest of the Jewish world at this point does. Interestingly, the Chazon Ish said, a plague on both your houses, because he says nobody can establish a new fast day without having a Navi. So he was opposed to both of them, commemorating new fast days. The Chassam Sofer, however, said you can establish a fast day for tshuva as long as it's not a fast day of mourning. So there's a very fine distinction there. And it's not clear if the Chazon Ish was talking about commemorating something on an existing fast day, because you're not creating a new fast day. They were already fasting on Asur B'Teves anyway. So again, the takeaway from our discussion, number one, Asur B'Teves is tomorrow. Today, at one point, they fasted. We're not really sure why, although it was also Ezra HaSofer's yortzeit, if that's a reason to fast. But the 7th, 8th, and 9th day of Teves were mentioned as important, significant dates in the Jewish calendar. And Asar Teves assumed more prominence after the Shoah, according to the rabbinate, but according to the Jewish world, this was not widely accepted. Again, it's a very, Rav Soloveitchik was asked the same question, and he was very troubled by it because, who are we to establish new Jewish calendrical events? We are not privileged to have a Navi in our midst. How can we, who are nowhere near the Nevi'im and the Antek Knesset Hagdolah and the Chanoim and the Amaroim, how can we establish a new event on the Jewish calendar? He was opposed to that in general. Later on, he kind of softened his position a little bit. Tremendous pressure in terms of Yom HaAtzmaut. But if you look back historically, just to finish up, Hanukkah became a holiday not so much because of the rabbis, but because of the people celebrating a victory. And after doing it for centuries, it became part of the Jewish calendar. Yom HaAtzmaut, in many parts of the Jewish world, is accepted as a semi-yantif. People say Hallel on Yom HaAtzmaut. People have special barbecues and special events and parades and so forth. 100 years from now, if Mashiach isn't here by then, it might be part of the Jewish calendar as an official holiday. I mean, it is today in many places. But Rav Soloveitchik's point is a very valid point that we have to be very, very careful into establishing new holidays that our Chazal did not establish. But if there is a pressing need, such as following the Shoah, there was a need to address the issue of when do you observe yahrzeit for someone who was killed, you don't know the date. So by giving them a place to say Kaddish, to fast, it served a tremendously important purpose. But to do something where there wasn't a pre-existing day, to create a new yontif, that might still be problematic. But Asar B'Teves has a fascinating history. And if you can Google the article, there's a wonderful article by Professor Sid Lyman, Schneider Lyman, on that 8th of Teves. What happened on the 8th day of Teves that nobody seems to know about? And he goes through all the sources. You can Google it. It goes through all of the sources that you can possibly think of, and many you never even heard of. And the bottom line is, we don't know. He could not find any of the ancient or medieval manuscripts or sources, any specific event that took place on the 8th of Teves where people would fast. But it's a fascinating article. I think Rabbi Taubes gives it's also online, gave a shiur on it once also. But it's a fascinating topic. Anyway, when you, in general, on fast days, when we say slichos are one of the most underappreciated forms of Jewish literature that we have. Primarily because you have to be a tremendous scholar to understand the piyutim. And you can't just fly through it the way we do in shul. And you have to sit down and learn the piyutim the way you learn a Blat Gemara, because the language is very difficult. It's very flowery language. The Paitanim who wrote, these are all, every word in the piyutim refers to a Gemara or to a Medrash or to some historical event. And you can't just run through it without really studying it. So I urge you, when you say slichos tomorrow morning, if you have an annotated slichos that have notes, I refer to that, and perhaps after davening, take some time to go through it slowly. The Hebrew is difficult. The Hebrew is very difficult. It's not even Mishnaic Hebrew, it's Midrashic Hebrew, and every word refers to 6 other things. That's why the footnotes are very important, but it's a part of our heritage, part of our literature. And many things that we learn, such as the fact that Ezra Sofer's yahrzeit is today, we learn from the piyutim that we say tomorrow morning. Anyway, that's a little bit about Asar B'Teves. It's a fascinating day, the whole period, those 3 days are fascinating historically. Question?
Wally,
Yes, Nathan.
what is the Torah's source for fasting? How do we know that we should fast?
Well, the Torah only gives you one source for fasting, and that's Yom Kippur.
What
Torah
does
has,
it say?
it says, Tanu es nafsho seichem. You have to afflict yourselves. Tanu from the word tanis, fast days. And that's the only biblical fast day, is Yom Kippur. The others are commemorating events that took place relating to the destruction of the temple, and that was in the aftermath of the destruction of the first temple. The prophets, Zechariah Hanavi, is the one that established or codified those fast days for the Jewish community. The Torah talks about Yom Kippur. Anything else? Yes.
In the interest of why don't yeshivas who have yeshiva day schools, Tinus Esther, Sof Gedalia, and on a Servatatus, why don't they, instead of davening the sleep, take the time to say less sleepos and explain what's going on? Why don't they do that?
I cannot. I asked the same question about davening in general.
Okay, right.
I can't, I don't have an answer for you. I'm not in charge. Even when I was in charge, I wasn't in charge. I couldn't control that.